All right, Michael, thanks for reaching out to me for the online lesson. I think that the issues that I see in your swing are very easy to describe, and I hope they make sense to you. So let's dig in here and take a look at what's going on. From this down the line view here on the right, the biggest issue that I see is what's happening with your trail arm nearing the top of the backswing. Now I know that you said that you've seen a few different golf pros, and the answer has always been to rotate the lower body a little bit more. And I can see how that would be problematic for you, and even difficult because of what's going on with your arm. So I have no doubt that you're trying to rotate your body as much as you can, but you've got some geometry problems going on with the arm structure at the top of the backswing. So, everything here in this first phase of the backswing looks pretty normal. Even to left arm parallel to the ground here, everything is pretty orthodox. It's nearing the top of the backswing in this phase when there's a move that you make here that becomes very problematic. And so what I want to call your attention to is basically this trail arm and trail shoulder. And I want you to look at this humerus bone right here, and I want you to note how it's basically horizontal to the ground. So that move that you're making there with your right shoulder is called abduction. Essentially, your right arm is moving away from your rib cage too far. And so what that abduction does is it causes your left arm to move really, really tight across your chest, or stretch essentially that left shoulder very, very dramatically, and causes the hand path to be very, very deep at the top. So, if I draw a straight line down kind of from the butt of the club on a 90-degree angle, you can see that the butt of the club is well outside the line of your heels, and for most players it's generally somewhere through the ankle bone, or right, or a little bit closer to the heel line. But you're getting very, very deep at the top, and it's happening through this abduction move that you're making here on the right, letting this elbow kind of fly away from the body, if you will. And that's got a couple of that can cause a couple of different problems, but in your case, it's just simply causing too big of a stretch in your left shoulder, and your hand path to be too deep. So if we take a look at it through transition, it gets super deep, and then the hands can never move back out in front of you. So this alignment right here, when the left arm is parallel to the ground, the depth of your lead arm right here is basically going to determine the geometry of your swing. And what I mean by that is just kind of imagine your hand path moving in a circular fashion around your body like this. And when the deeper that lead arm is, the more your hand path would be thrown out to the right like this. Even though you're trying your hardest to rotate your body, this lead arm being so deep and so inside makes it difficult for your hands to turn the corner and the club to turn the corner. And what happens is you get this release pattern that is kind of flippy around the corner. And so that flip that you're seeing right here happens in every good golf swing. It just happens at a later point in time. It happens when the hands have traveled around the corner and in front of the torso. This isn't a your body is stalling problem, because if I measured you on 3D right here, I would say your hips are open enough, your shoulders are open enough, and if I measured you at impact, I would say that maybe the shoulders are a little square, but I've seen far worse alignments from good players, even on the PGA Tour. So yes, could your hips be a little bit more open? Sure. Could your shoulders be a little more open? Sure. But they don't necessarily have to be if you shape your hand path differently. And what I mean by that is your lead arm being pinned across your chest is actually making it harder for you to rotate. So I want you to envision kind of a figure skater on the ice that's doing that's doing one of the circular spins, and you'll note that they extend their arms out away from them and it slows them down, and then they pull their arms in tight to their body and they spin really fast. So in your case, when this left arm is pinned across your chest like this, it's making it harder for you to rotate, versus if your left arm was a little further out over here, the hand path would be able to turn the corner a little faster and you'd have a little bit more club face control. Now, there are some good players that have this late shoulder abduction move that you have here on the right. Now, Rory McIlroy being one of them. Now, it's not, there aren't really any to your severity, but if you look at Rory here, let me find a slower version. Here you go. You and him don't look very different in this phase of the backswing. Very similar depths to the hand path, very similar shoulder tilts, pelvic tilts, very similar shaft pitch, very similar pelvis rotation, so it's pretty darn similar there. You get this huge abduction move where the elbow moves way away from you, and in his case he gets some of that, but it's a little smaller. You can see it right there. He doesn't quite get the forearm bone or the humerus parallel to the ground like you do. But how he makes it work is he's got a very, very dynamic rotary lower body movement, and the hand path can go around the corner really fast. Now, with your hip issues, that's not going to be possible, so we're going to have to work around that. So to work around that, we've got to change this arm structure. And so what we're going to have to do is at the top, this should probably be about the top of your backswing right there. And I'm not saying you need to limit the rotation of your body. I'm saying you need to limit the movement in your shoulder. And there's a lot of different training aids that we could use to do that, or drills. So here's the first one that I would have you do. And I do this a lot with the players because your issue is pretty common. And I'll basically just have them take their right hand off the club and place it behind their in front of their belly and in behind their right elbow. And what it's doing is it's creating kind of a brace. And that brace is going to prevent the right arm from being pulled back behind the golfer excessively in the backswing. And so you can see there his left hand is stopping him from going into major abduction like you are, which basically keeps his arms a little bit more in front of his torso, and you can actually hit shots like this. It's a little bit challenging at first, but you get the hang of it. It helps improve your pivot as well because you're kind of pulling yourself. You're pulling that lead arm down in front of you. I'm sorry, that right arm down in front of you and around the corner. So that's the first drill and the first option to get the feeling of external rotation at the top without having a lot of abduction. The second thing you could do is basically using a tour striker ball. And I use these a lot with my players, and I've had a lot of success with it. So what that's going to look like is this. So you could see that he's still getting a lot of depth to his hand path in the backswing. That's not an issue. That's going to help the club shallow. But here at the top, because there's an emphasis on maintaining this golf ball, this tour striker ball between the forearms, you'll note that he's not able to abduct the shoulder and create that big wide gap like you have there at the top. So, the tour striker ball would fall out if he did that, and therefore his hand path can move more out on the downswing versus yours. You can see how even though your shoulders are pretty much in the same position that his are, in terms of rotating back to the target, you've got a major stretch going on in this left shoulder because that lead arm is still so in and far across, your body. And just to give you kind of a point of reference, if we look at him here, if I drew a straight line up from the butt of the club, 90 degrees, you could see where it crosses his body, and in your case, it's way behind you, way behind the shoulder. So we've got to get your hand path moving a little bit more out on the downswing so that it makes a wider arc and it can turn the corner, and the club face will start to stabilize like you see here on the left. And to do that, we've got to slow down this abduction at the top of the backswing. So hope these drills help you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and I will be happy to clarify.